Welcome to our live stream, everybody. Thanks for joining on short notice here. I got a little something in the mail today, actually a couple days ago, and I wanted to share it with you. It's a little funny because last time I checked the channel is actually at 140 some thousand subscribers, but for whatever reason, took YouTube a little while to get this to us, but they did send over the this right here. So thanks to everybody who's been so supportive over the years. I want to say a few things that more important than however many people have subscribed to the channel. I think what's more important to me is the community that's been built here, and I think mostly it's been very supportive actually. Not just you of me, but I think that each of the people that come to the videos and leave comments and help answer the questions and things of that nature. I've met a lot of great people. I've learned so much from other people. So thank you all for all of those things. And it's been a good ride, and there's no plans on stopping anytime soon. I do have a day job, so that gets in the way of doing more. I'd like to do more, but we do what we can, and we'll keep doing that. I want to just show you something real quick here that made me kind of smile. This is from 2009. This was my very first video posted to YouTube. It's a comparison of the Shure SM58 and the Electro Voice ND767A. If you ever, it's a stretch to call it a video. Actually, it's basically a still image of the two microphones, and I just kind of give you some audio samples of each of them, and it makes me laugh when I watch it now. So in any case, I hope that is entertaining to you, if nothing else. So. The interesting thing, though, that I noticed is that when I went back and I looked, that was my first video, so it was very much about audio recording. And then the next, I think, 3 were focused on lighting, in fact. So the focus of the channel has been the same from the very, very start, and the plan is to keep it pretty much the same going forward. So I hope that's helpful for you guys. And then a couple of things that I hope everyone has taken away from the channel over time, and that is, number one, that lighting is probably more important than your camera. I think today you can buy easily a $500 camera, and if you learn how to light, you can make amazing images with that $500 camera. You do not need a $20,000 camera. You don't need a $10,000 camera. You don't even need a $2,000 camera. If you learn how to light, you can make amazing visuals. Number 2, recording good sound makes or breaks your video or film. And if you don't know what I mean by that, let me just clarify. If your audio quality is good, then your message is going to be heard, and it's going to be delivered to your audience. And if it's a message that is there to touch them in some way emotionally or convey information, whatever it may be, if it's got good audio, then it's going to have a ton more impact. Now, if it is bad audio, you will lose your audience like that, because there's so much competing for everyone's attention today. Bad audio is the first thing that's going to turn people off. And I think you lose credibility too if you don't really kind of do what you can to produce the best quality audio. Also, another thing that is kind of related to that is that you can make a mediocre microphones actually sound very good if you learn the skills to use it to the best of its ability, or to the best of your ability. And that's working with the laws of physics. So here, for example, I have a microphone. Part of the reason it sounds pretty decent is that it's right up close. And you could do the same thing with a $100 microphone or even a $60 dynamic microphone. So my hope is that going forward, we'll continue to do gear reviews. There's no question. But my hope is that we can spend a little bit more time talking about doing more tutorials, doing more focus on improving audio quality and things of that nature, and how to do that, how to invest in your skills, how to get better skills so that those skills will serve your audience by producing higher quality video and audio. So that's mainly all I wanted to say tonight. I don't have a lot beyond that, but again, just thank you to everyone that's been involved here, and I really appreciate it. Now, there were a couple of thanks to everyone with the congrats. Pablo asked a question here. Congrats. What's your day job, if you don't mind me asking? I'm actually a videographer and a product manager at a software company. My primary job is product manager. We develop software for airlines, and my main job is to work with the development teams and the legal and the commercial teams, so on and so forth, and create new software products. So that's the main thing I do. Paul asks a question here. You seem to be very comfortable using the metric system. How come? I'm actually not. I have to look up things for the metric system. I am an American, and in America, we're still using the whatever we call this system. And the reason I wish the United States in 1980 had moved over to the metric system as they had originally planned, but we didn't. And the reason I actually use the metric system in most of my videos when I can is that a larger part of the audience is actually outside of the United States than inside the United States. So the larger part of the viewership is not in the U.S., where so that's the main reason. So I do have to look it up generally. So, all right. David Griffin Cook says, just teach me how to make a lav sound like a shotgun mic. Well, you can do some EQ to make it sound pretty close, but lavalier mics generally sound like lavalier mics because they're attached to the body. So they sound like they're attached to the body. That's the reality. You can use EQ to do that. That's a great idea for a future episode. So I'll make a note of that. All right. The American system is called gibberish. I'm not taking issue with that. All right. How do you brainstorm for ideas to post on YouTube? A lot of them, to be honest, so there are a few things. Number one, they are the questions that actually come in on the comments. So when people ask questions, and that's one of the great things about YouTube is that's how you actually can build a community, and that's why I'm very appreciative to YouTube for building this platform. Now, it's not a perfect platform, but it's a pretty good platform. And the reason I say that is that it gives opportunity for people to leave comments and ask questions. And I think it works out really well as far as education. Now, it's not a perfect education platform. It would be cool if we could do more face-to-face. But in any case, it does. That's the main way I get the ideas for future episodes. And of course, another one is when manufacturers contact me, if we're talking about gear reviews. I can afford to buy some of the gear, but some of it I can't. I can't afford to buy all the gear that we've actually reviewed. So it is helpful when companies are able to donate that gear to me so that I can make the review. So I would like to talk a little bit about gear reviews too. There are some things that are kind of interesting that I've learned over the years doing gear reviews. And one of them is that, they're helpful, but they're really just sort of a data point. I would not look at them as anything more than a single data point. So if you're really serious about buying a particular piece of gear, I still recommend, even if you watch my videos, but you should go out and see as many other reviews of that same piece of gear as you can and get different perspectives, because that's one of the things that YouTube's good at, is providing a lot of different perspectives. And so I find that really, really helpful. So there's also this weirdness about gear, and I guess when a manufacturer gives it to me, some people I've had people comment and say, you were bought off. You're just saying that it's a good piece of gear because it was given to you. I do want to talk about some of the kind of the rules I put down for when I do work with different manufacturers. So if they're willing to send me the piece of gear, first of all, I don't take payment. I don't do the types of videos where, and this happens a lot on YouTube actually, the manufacturer will not only give the gear to the person making the review, they will actually pay them as well. I won't take any additional payment aside from the donation of the gear, because I think that at that point it's no longer a review, and I think it's really that becomes very problematic at that point. So that's one thing that I do. I always disclose that the gear was given to me in the intro part, and I've gotten a lot of interesting feedback on putting those summaries at the start of the video. That actually came about. That was basically a request or a series of comments that people had left on various videos. And I realized that everyone's time is precious. And one of the things that I got were, gosh, it took you so long to get to the point. Well, the way I approach reviews is I really want to give people as much information as possible. So if they're serious about potentially buying this piece of gear, I want to give them a really good view into what the gear is and, what are the pros and cons, and so on and so forth. And so I realize everyone's time is precious as well. And so for those of you that have subscribed to the channel, what I didn't want to do is I didn't want you to have to sit through, if I review some piece of gear that's not really that relevant to what you're doing, I didn't want you to have to sit through 10, 15, maybe even 20 or 25 minutes of review. I just wanted to, in those cases, my perspective is, if it's not something that's really relevant to you at that time, I'd love it if you just watch up to the summary, read the summary, and you go, okay, this review's here. So if I ever am in a position where I need to buy this gear, I can come back and check out the whole review. And you can get a summary of what I'm generally going to talk about in that front page summary. So that's my thinking on that. I hope you guys continue to find that helpful, and we'll continue doing that unless you all say no. All right. And I also dismiss people. Yes, Mr. Hang 562. It's good to hear from you, by the way. I do dismiss people sometimes because I don't want people to waste their time. So for example, if I'm reviewing a microphone, and it's the type of microphone, this one here, for example, is an Earthworks SR314. This microphone is actually made as a handheld condenser microphone for live performance. That's really what it was designed for. But when I reviewed it, of course, I have a different perspective on it. I'm approaching it more from a live streaming point of view, podcasting point of view, maybe voiceover point of view. And so I just wanted people to know that up front. If they were a musician coming there to get a musician's kind of perspective on this microphone, I wasn't going to be able to provide that necessarily. At least I wasn't in that video. And so that's why I dismiss them up front. I just say, hey, this is what this is going to be. Don't want to waste your time. Talk to you later. So in any case, and somebody pointed out here, the imperial system is what we're talking about. And then congrats here. Tyler Edwards says, and by 100K, I mean 144K. So yeah, so here's the story behind that too. And here's another example of how this has been a really kind of a ride that has increased my faith in humanity. Is that a couple of days ago, or maybe a week ago, my friend Kevin, who many of you know, the basic filmmaker, he said, Curtis, when are you going to get your 100,000K, the whatever this is called, from YouTube? And I said, yeah, I don't know. They never sent it to me when I hit 100K. I don't have time to go track it down. I'm busy making videos. So he said, dude, you have to do it. It's really simple. You need to celebrate. And so he told me what to do. I did it. It took 5 minutes, and they sent it. So that's an example of why I really appreciate the community that's built up here over time. So my perspective is my perspective, and it's somewhat limited, but when we have all of the input from all of you, that's super helpful as well. All right, let's see if there are any other questions here. We got some thumbs up. Summaries are helpful. How would you, here's a good one from Jan. How would you describe the temptation to become clickbaity and play YouTube's game so you'd grow quicker at cost of your sincerity? Well, let me talk about that. So I think what a lot of YouTubers are doing, and incidentally, I don't consider myself a YouTuber, which makes some people kind of laugh, and that's fine. I really consider myself a filmmaker's advocate. So what I'm trying to do is take a look at some gear that you're considering and give you some impressions and some, kind of background information that the manufacturer can't necessarily tell you. That's one thing. And secondly, as an educator, those are the things I really consider myself as opposed to a YouTuber. But for me, it really is not about the subscriber numbers. And I'm not doing, while ads do play in front of my videos and at the end of them, I think it play at the end. I don't even know if they play at the end. So that is one source of income to help kind of offset the costs of all the time I spend doing this. So what I don't need is I would rather have a quality audience. By that, I mean people that are genuinely interested in the topics that I'm talking about. I'm not interested, like for me, 1 million subscribers is not necessarily the goal. The goal is to be able to continue to provide value for people that are making film, especially when it comes to increasing their sound production quality and their lighting. And I always, so a couple things. Number one, I'm not the youngest. I'm not the typical YouTuber from this standpoint of my age. I'm older than many of them. Number two, the audience, my audience, when I had a session actually talking with a YouTube, I can't remember what they call them. They're like creator advisors or something like that. I can't remember. It was actually a number of years ago. And one of the things they said when we sat down and talked, we had a couple sessions where we talked, and they were trying to kind of help me get my footing as a creator. And one of the things that they said in astonishment was, Curtis, you don't realize what you have. You have an audience that's very different. And I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way to any of you watching here tonight, but the one thing that's unique about this little community that we've built here is that it's generally a more mature audience. And so clickbait is not the answer for my audience, I don't think. And it's not my style. I would be acting like someone else that I'm not, and so I just don't do it. You'll notice that I generally don't put my face on my thumbnails. I've actually I have a really great, I have a guy that does the thumbnails for me now, I think he started about 2 years ago. So there was a point in time at which my thumbnails became a whole lot better, and it's thanks to him. His name is Casper, and Casper's in Poland. He does a great job on these, but he and I actually had a little bit of a fight over this, and he said, Curtis, you need to put your face on the thumbnails, and I flat refused. I said, I don't think that serves the audience. I don't think it serves what I'm trying to accomplish here, and people to this day disagree with me. All the big creators are putting their face on their thumbnails, and oftentimes with goofy looks on their face, and it's just not me. And so don't plan on it. If that's something that's important to you, I'm sorry, but I'm probably never going to do that. So in any case, someone here says that I'm like the Seth Godin of YouTube, focus on serving the audience, great content, not flash and hype. I've been also called the Bob Ross of the microphone world, and I'm actually honored to be called either one of those. Seth Godin's a new one, and I'm actually honored on that. Yeah, and so the audience is definitely a little bit more mature, both in terms, I think, of what they're looking for, what you guys are looking for, but also in terms of age. YouTube actually collects those stats. I don't know how I guess when you create your Google account, you put your birth date in. I don't get to see the individual information, but it just kind of categorizes. And the audience that's subscribed to my channel and that watches the videos here are actually a category older. So they're generally in at least the 25 to 35 year age range. Whereas a lot of the big channels are in the next lower age category generally. So something kind of interesting there. All right. Here's a question from Wai Zhao. One of my favorite channels on YouTube. Do you have a degree in audio engineering? What's your prior background? Perhaps you mentioned many times in the past and I missed it. My background is not a formal background in audio engineering. Actually, I have a master's degree in information systems. I have a bachelor's degree, believe it or not, in psychology. And in my focus is in both of those. Well, it's actually a longer story. Let me tell you the longer story. So for my undergraduate degree, I got a psychology degree, and then I actually started a doctoral program in psychology as well. And my goal was eventually to become a clinical psychologist, and I realized pretty quickly that wasn't going to happen. And what happened was I found that my inclination was really more towards statistical analysis and things of that nature. And so I ended up going more into that, and then I ended up from there working in the, you'll laugh when you hear this, I actually worked at a company called AOL for 10 years. And when I left AOL, I was a principal analyst. And so my job there was largely statistical modeling and predictive modeling and things of that nature. So I was working with the customer service organization, trying to kind of help them develop better ways of serving customers. Anyway, that whole AOL story is a little bit of a sad story, but for me, in terms of the start of my career, it was a really good place to start. And so I found that I had this kind of technical inclination. And then while I was still working at AOL, my brother, who is a musician, had bought his first recording rig, and he came over to my house. He had a Universal Audio preamp and compressor and Neumann TLM 103 microphone, and at the time a Digi 003 audio interface, Firewire interface. and he built out his first Pro Tools rig, and I just got really excited about audio recording. So it was from him that I learned a lot about audio recording. And then I was also a photographer. And so it was when the DSLR started shipping with the video recording features that I kind of married the two of them together and started focusing on that. So a lot of it was self-taught. I do have some mentors, some people I've learned a ton from, and a whole bunch of people. So in any case, that's kind of the background there. Do you miss that weird, wow, AOL, do you miss that weird sound when trying to connect to the internet? I do not miss it at all. All right, let's see here. Timothy Lee is under 18 years old and still loves my reviews. Well, thank you, Timothy. Again, I would say the audience is a little bit more mature. Let's say that. Let's call it that instead of old. And yes, I'm really grateful. So, all right. Well, let's just kind of take another look here through the comments here. Curtis, been waiting for an A10 Mini for 3 months now and couldn't wait anymore. So today I bought a Roland VO2 HD multi-format video mixer. Any thoughts on that mixer? Rob, I have not used that one. I've seen an online demonstration, and it looked great, but I haven't actually used it. So, all right. David Griffin Cooks, Curtis, rapid fire question, top 5 sound equipment tools for 2020. Do they have to have come out in 2020? I don't know the answer to that. Let's see, let's think about that. Well, there's a Zoom, well, can we go back to 2019 at least? The MixPre 2 is a big one, I think. That was 2019. You put me on the spot. I don't know right off the top of my head. What are some others here? For me, this did not come out in 2019, but this microphone has been really, really good in terms of for live streaming. I would say it's probably my favorite live stream mic. It's a little bit crisp in the presence, so my sibilance gets a little bit accentuated, but not as much as a lot of other microphones. So I've been really happy with that. So there's the Earthworks SR314. A10 Mini is not really a piece of audio gear, but the A10 Mini Pro, and that was 2019 as well, wasn't it? I don't remember. Actually, the Pro may have been this year. So that's been a nice addition as well. Anthony Goodley says Go XLR. That's one I haven't tried yet, but it does look like a really amazing piece of gear as well. So I'll have to think more on some others. What's your gear that you're using today? So let's talk about that a little bit. So again, this is the Earthworks SR314, the microphone. This is going into a Universal Audio Apollo X6 audio interface. So this is doing a little processing. It's actually doing a little bit of compression on my voice so that we can get our levels up to where I want them. It kind of evens out the amplitude of my voice a little bit. And then that is sent out line level out. And let me just talk about that. A lot of people don't realize there's a distinction between microphone level and line level. Line level is a stronger signal, and so that's going out of my Apollo X6 into my camera over here. This is a Canon C200, which was originally purchased to do corporate video, but I got it right before the pandemic hit, and I haven't used it for corporate video at all because we haven't shot any corporate video. But the nice thing about it is it does have an XLR input that can be switched to line level. So what that means is that the camera doesn't have to do any amplification of the audio signal. It just has to convert the audio from an already line level signal into digital, and then it sends it out from the camera into my A10 Mini Pro, which is streaming to you tonight. So that's what we're listening to here tonight, just so you know what that's about. Another question I want to talk about a little bit that I've heard 1,000 times since I've started doing a little bit more live streaming. I have a second channel where we do live streams every week, but a question I get all the time is why do you put a microphone in the frame? And you don't have to. I used to have a big old Shure SM7B that was right here, and it was kind of, a little too much in the frame. But now we have this here, which is a little less imposing, but still in the frame. The reality is that I've got a room here. I've got a big desk that you can't see in front of me here. I've got a computer screen right here. I've got a monitor here. I've got a rack of gear right here next to me. So I've got a lot of sound that's reflecting back. And so I generally like to close mic, and I'm using this microphone here, which has a cardioid polar pattern. So this helps to kind of prevent a lot of that reflected sound from getting into the microphone. Now, you can boom a mic as well, but when I do boom a mic in this close proximity to all this stuff here, you start to get some of those reflections into the microphone, and you start to get some comb filtering effects. So that's the main reason I do this. Now, some other people say, well, why don't you just use a lavalier microphone? Same thing. Lavs sound like lavs. They're attached to your body, and they sound like they're attached to your body. So anyway, that's kind of the main thinking here. So, all right. Best light system for iPhone. Wow. The challenge. Well, I think if you're going to be lighting a person, doing a talking head type of thing, I think you're going to want a very soft light. The challenge I've always had with phones is that the dynamic range is not amazing relative to what I'm used to using. And so you'll very quickly get these hot spots, and it's hard to get it to look right, but a pretty even lighting. And actually, also, if you can bring up the ambient lighting in your space, that can be really helpful. In fact, let me show you something here. I'm going to stand up and move the camera a little bit. I'm not going to tilt it, but you can see that C-stand right here. That actually has a light that's pointed up toward the ceiling, and it's bouncing light off the ceiling. And in fact, you can see it on the wall behind it. Let me just move this back. Okay, so the reason I do that is that, and then this would actually work relatively well for a phone. So I have another light that's right up here with a softbox. This is the old, the DNO 180W, which I reviewed a while back. And that has a softbox on it. So that's what's lighting my face. But then I have that one to bring the ambient levels up in the background. And so what that does is I'm managing the dynamic range of the scene itself by lighting it. And so that's really important when you're working with phones, because it depends on which app you're using to do the recording. But the default app on an iPhone, for example, is auto exposure, with an exception that you can kind of drag and tell it where to focus and to take its exposure reading from. But I find that it's constantly changing. And, it's not actually, with the iPhone app, you can actually tell it to lock onto something and stay on that for exposure. But still, I find it really important to bring the back, so that the background isn't so completely different in terms of lighting than the foreground. So if you just use a key light on your talent and you don't have any other lights, it tends to get really confused, and it starts doing weird things. It doesn't look great. Now, if you use an app like Filmic Pro, you have a lot more control, and you can control that. So I would say there's some thoughts there. Hopefully that helps a little bit there for your question. Here's a question from David. What career advice would you give a new location sound mixer? Any common mistakes to avoid? It's interesting. I think it really comes down to just being responsible and making a good experience for your clients. So you want to have a good relationship with everyone else on set. You want to make sure that you're fulfilling their needs and their expectations as far as providing the sound quality. Communication is a huge one. You have to communicate as much as possible. I would prefer, I always, and I tell people this when we have more pre-production meetings, or at least a pre-production meeting, where we get a chance to talk about things. I get a chance to understand what it is they're looking for, to understand, to see the script ahead of time. And I always compliment the directors or producers that do that, just so they understand how appreciative I am of that, because that makes for a better experience for them in terms of what I can provide them. And so, I often, when I'm working on independent films where it's just a crew that's just learning the craft and they don't know a lot of things, I educate them about a lot of things as it relates to audio. So, for example, I worked with a DP who had never used timecode before, and I had mentioned it to him. We actually worked on several projects together. His name is Levi Whitney, and great guy. He didn't know anything about timecode, didn't know how it worked, didn't know what it, so on and so forth. And so, one of the things I did is I kind of told him about it and educated him a little bit about it, not like pushing it really hard, but just kind of describing it. And he eventually he came to me and said, "Hey, on this next project, let's do timecode. I'm ready for you to teach me how to do it, and let's see if we can make that work." Because he'd done some of the post work on some of our projects, and he was a little bit frustrated. So anyway, there are some things there. So some things to consider. Best cinema camera under $2,000. Well, the only cinema cameras that are under $2,000 that I can think of are the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and 6K, but that's never the true price. I mean, of course, there are lenses, but for those cameras, there's a lot of stuff you have to add to them. So, in fact, I think we showed those in just a... Back there, you can see kind of a blob of black camera gear. That's the Pocket 4K and the Pocket 6K on tripods back there, sitting next to each other. You can see they're pretty rigged out. It takes a lot to rig these out. So while the camera itself, both of those cameras are less than $2,000, once you add everything, it's at least approaching 2,000 and possibly exceeding 2,000. So be careful. The Pocket 4K is a good camera. What I find is that it burns through, this is nothing new to anyone that's done any research on these, but that burns through batteries. And so I've added a battery plate, which means you had to add a base plate and some rods. And I've added a little bit of a matte box because I have started using various mist filters. I'm actually, the main one I like and have is a Radiant Soft by Schneider, which are really, they look really nice for the types of things that I'm doing. Again, interviews mostly for corporate pieces. So that's a good one. Oh yeah, I guess Andrew Pelgrave brings up GH5S is another one from Panasonic. And I think those you can get under 2,000, but again, you have to budget for a lens and an extra battery and so on and so forth. So it's kind of tough, but I agree with Rory, who says cost everything out ahead of time, because it is more than just the camera and lens. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of us make. But yeah, so just be careful there. But you could probably get something workable for under $2,000. All right, Power Sports Quebec says, "Hello, Mr. Judd. I'm a YouTuber in the power sports field, and your reviews and advice have helped me make better content. Thank you for that." Well, thank you very much for the compliment. David also notes here that he'll be using timecode for the first time in September. A little nervous. Don't channel your nervous energy into testing and testing and testing and testing ahead of time. Then when you get there, you'll be in much better shape. And you'll know what to do, you'll know which problems to fix and how to fix them. So definitely do that. Erwin Francisco Ruiz asks, "Do you have any initial thoughts about the Zoom H8?" I have a few thoughts. Number one, I have placed a pre-order, so as soon as B&H starts shipping those, I should get one. Of course, the goal is to review it. No, I don't need it. I have plenty of other recorders. But the reason I'm doing it is to produce a review for the larger community. Initial thoughts: it looks like it's an interesting device. It's targeted. It's kind of Zoom very clearly professing who the audience is for this recorder, because they've always been Like the Zoom H series was originally, the very first one was a Zoom H4. I actually had that recorder. It was horrible. But it was groundbreaking at the same time. Nobody had ever created a recorder exactly like that before at that price point. There was another company. What's the name of that other company? I can't remember. They haven't made anything in a while, or nothing new that I've seen. But theirs was more expensive, and it was a different form factor, and it was made kind of for different things. It didn't have built-in microphones. In any case, I think Zoom's initial thought was this is for musicians. But what ended up happening is that was still available during the kind of the DSLR revolution when the DSLRs became video cameras. And so the Zoom H4 was accessible in terms of price to a lot of people, or was it the H4n by the time the DSLR started shooting video? In any case, that became a very popular recorder, not because it was amazing, but because it was accessible in terms of price, and it was pretty straightforward to use. So now with the H8, it has the touch screen with a different mode. So there's a mode for field recording, a mode for podcasting. Can't remember what the third one for music. I don't remember. I think it is for music. But anyway, so they've kind of tuned the interface to work for the particular type of creator that it's for. It's still very much a consumer device from my point of view, but I think it could be a really effective one for a lot of people. So I'm curious to see if they've done anything to improve the preamplifiers and the converters. It does not do 32-bit float like the Zoom F6 does, so it's not. I think they're reserving the 32-bit float for their professional, what they consider their professional line. So in any case, those are some thoughts on the H8 so far. I'll get that in as soon as they start shipping it, and we'll get to work on a review there. All right, regravity business. I wish if you could focus on the affordable stuff, especially this 2020. I tried to do a mix. Here's what I have to say. I do a mix of things because I have a lot of my work, of course, when I'm doing corporate video, I'm not using $20 lavalier microphones generally. And there are reasons for that. My clients expect more than that. So they expect better quality than that. So in any case, I try to do a mix still. So I'm going to do, I reviewed, for example, the Rode NT USB fairly recently. The Rodecaster Pro, I think, is another example that's just out of reach of a lot of people, a lot of creators, because I think it's $600, if I'm not mistaken. But then we also reviewed the Zoom L8, which is a more affordable version of a similar type of thing. So I'm trying to do a mix of things. I can't promise to cover nothing but affordable things because I just unfortunately don't have time, because a lot of the things that I personally buy are not going to be on that really, really cheap, the low end in terms of price. So I do my best, and I'll continue to do my best on that. Okay. And Mr. Hang, yes, a review is coming on the H8. Power Sports. I bought a Sony NX80, and it has provisions for a shotgun mic. I used my Rode video mic, but I want something better that fits the shotgun mic or shotgun mount on a budget. Your thoughts? So I assume I think the NX80 has does it have XLR inputs? If so, on a budget, I guess it depends on what your budget is. I think the least expensive shotgun microphone, and I don't have it, and I've never personally used it, but I've heard it in a lot of samples online. The Audio-Technica AT875R sounds pretty good. It's less than $200 US. It's worth a look. So that's my first thought on that. Okay. TIAC was a company, when I was talking a little bit about the competitor to Zoom, TIAC was one of them. There was another one as well at TIAC, and then of course, Tascam is part of that group as well. Anyway. Mr. Heng says, I'm tempted to sell my H4n now that you've called it crap. No. It's not crap. It's just, it just has its limitations. That's all. And it can do the job depending on what the job is. Now, you're teaching students at a high school. I think it's a great recorder for them. You start somewhere. All right, can I use this is from Archie Pina. Can I use a Sennheiser G4 as a portable audio hop, or just keep myself looking at Comtex? You can. It has some limitations, but it can be done. We actually did a sound for video session some time ago where one of my friends, Greg Palmer, came on and talked about, he was using a G3, but the concept is all going to be the same. And so if you just do a search for Curtis Judd Audio camera hop, you will find that session, and he talks about the details on that. So Archie, hopefully that helps. Hey, Tom Antos, oh yeah, I forgot to say, happy Independence Day for the Americans out there. And congrats on your channel growth. Thank you, Tom. I very much appreciate that. Tom has been very kind to me, and we got a chance to talk at NAB a couple times over the last few years, and he's even invited me to be in some of his videos. So thanks again for that, Tom. It's good to see you here. What do you think of the Comica Boom X, the dual transmitter? I think it's a dual receiver system. This is from Deacon Media Keydane. I have not used that. The Comica Boom X. I've had a lot of I had a rough time with Comica in the past. Let's just say that. But I have reviewed their Blink 500 system, I think it was called. It's very much a consumer system. Their gear, even though they call it pro gear, is not really pro gear, but can it get the job done for what you're doing? If you are self-funding, I think it can. The best thing that they've made that I've tested is actually an audio adapter. Remember, we don't use them so much anymore. It's funny, but remember Beach Tech? And then there was a company called, what was it called? They had made the Riggy Assist. Anyway, they Juiced Link was what they were called. So they had a bunch of these basically preamp audio adapters that you could put on your camera. Those actually could do a pretty good job. And actually Comica made one for a while that I reviewed a long time ago, which was actually quite good. It was almost as good as the Beach Tech and a lot less expensive. So anyway, so there's some things there. Ryan Payne says, my favorite category is the budget mid-range bang for buck. And I agree. So that's why, for example, you'll see me reviewing Deity microphones, their gear. They have really kind of hit that sweet spot where they're producing some really impressive gear for reasonable prices. So, all right. Ian Leffer says, Curtis, I just want to thank you for all of your well-explained tutorials. Last summer, I had to deal with 7 lav mics on actors, and you were the reason I could handle the task. Thank you. Well, I'm glad I was able to help there. And wow, that is a challenge when you have that many actors wearing wireless lav mics. What are your thoughts on Elgato? A lot of people seem to be buying it in digital marketing industry. I think their gear seems really overpriced for what you get. That's from Nev Harris. Nev, I don't have any Elgato gear, so I'm not sure, but I know they make the capture cards. And I thought they were fairly affordable, but maybe I'm wrong. All right. Andrew asks, is the Rode VideoMic NTG into a Zoom H1 a realistic option if you factor out the possibility of interference from an unbalanced cable? Ultralight, ultra flexible combo. It actually works. It worked quite well in my testing. So I think it's a realistic option. And you can rig that up on a boom of sort, especially if it's a static boom. You could even do it on a handheld boom. So yeah, I think it's totally an option. Short answer, yes. Ryan Payne says, what audio recorder would you go for when starting out in corporate video work? The one I went for when I was starting out in corporate video work was the Tascam DR60D Mark II, and it served me well, and we made some great recordings with it, so it seems like a pretty good option. Oh, Mr. Hang has a review of the Comica Boom XD D2. So there is a resource for you. Go check out Mr. Hang 562's channel. Rex says, "Hey Curtis, I want to thanks for sharing your videos with and cool reviews with advice. I just bought 2 mics after watching your reviews. Cheers from Brazil." Well, thanks for joining us here, and thanks for the. I hope hope the mics work out well for you. Oh, you're right. Sorry, Mr. Hang. Blink 500 is Ceramonic, not Comica. My bad. And actually, Ceramonic made the audio adapter I was talking about too. So actually, I guess I don't have experience with a lot of the Comica stuff that I thought I did. I had just a bad kind of exchange with them. I'm not gonna. I don't want to cast any shade. I'm just. Let's not talk about it. All right. Does the Zoom H1, this is from Alex Lee, does the Zoom H1N know how to differentiate between line and mic input, or is there a setting I need to change? Using line input on an H1N always gets me very lousy audio. I don't think it does. I think really what they have is just a gain range that you can adjust. And I think if you turn it, the problem with the Zoom, I don't know if the H1N does this. The original H1, actually, when you turned it all the way down, it started doing, it did some really weird digital attenuation things. So it's really not just the best option for that, Alex, unfortunately. And again, I don't know what the H1N, I did a review of the H1N, but that was not one thing that I specifically tested. And that was on loan when I did the review, so I had to send it back. So I don't have it here still. If I do get an opportunity to do that, I'll test that again. But I would not be surprised if they're still doing some sort of digital attenuation. And the problem with digital attenuation is that if if the input level is already clipping, digital attenuation doesn't fix that. You actually have to have an analog. From an analog level, it has to be able to come down. And that's what it's missing. David asks, what are the major differences between Lectrosonics and audio limited A10 wireless? I can't decide which one to invest in. They're both incredibly expensive. They are incredibly expensive indeed. And we did a podcast with Lectrosonics. And so if you have not subscribed to the podcast, you might consider doing that. That's not as regular. I do that when I can. But we interviewed, and I need to pull that up here. In any case, we interviewed, his name is slipping me at the moment, but we did interview the fellow from Lectrosonics, and we talked about their entire product line. I think the main thing I see is that Lectrosonics is, their classic series are these digital, kind of these hybrid systems, so they're analog and digital. And they now have a digital system as well. The A10 wireless system is fully digital. And the nice thing about the A10 system is you can output AES audio. So if you're using a mixer that has an AES input, or you can go directly in. So you're not doing the typical thing you're doing with wireless, which is capturing audio in the microphone in an analog format. In a lot of cases, even with the digital systems, then in the transmitter, it's being converted to digital, sent, and then with the A10 system, you can just, at the receiver, just send that digital signal out into your mixer, so you're not converting it multiple times. So you're not going analog to digital, back to analog, into your mixer, back to digital. So it's less processing. So the audio quality on the A10 is just absolutely fantastic. I don't have as much firsthand experience with Electro to really say, to really kind of speak with authority on the matter, but I've been really happy with my audio limited A10. I can say that. Mark Job, hey Curtis, I thought you were an American. Are you a Canadian like me? I am an American. I was born in California, and I live in Utah right now. So, recommendations on XLR cables from Michael Hanford. Most of my cables are actually custom cables, and I go to my local pro audio shop to get those made. They use Mogami cable and they use Neutrik XLR connectors. To me, that's the most effective way to do it. If you buy just a Mogami cable online, they're a lot more expensive, but at my local pro audio shop, they're probably half the price. So that's my recommendation if you have a local pro audio shop of some sort. Now, the one I'm talking about is not like a sound for film dealer. They mostly work with DJs and recording studios, things of that nature. So that's where I get those cables made, and that works out pretty nicely. Oh, here's a great question from Hobbs 2000. Thinking about the Earthworks SR314, this microphone right here. What do you think of that over the Shure SM7B? What I think is that if you're in an environment or a room where you do not have any sort of acoustical treatment, that the Shure SM7B may be a better option. If it's a decent room, maybe a carpeted floor, you could hang some sound blankets and it's a better sounding room. That's where I think the SR314 has a fuller sound. It definitely picks up more of the higher frequencies, whereas the SM7B is a very dark microphone. So that's my personal sense. And this microphone I just love. It's a $700 microphone, so it's more expensive than the SM7B. It's not within everyone's range, but it is for me, it's been a great microphone. I'm really happy with it. Katsura, Sunshine Rakugo channel. Curtis, starting a podcast for 4 people. I have a Zoom F6. Can I get away with just getting 4 Shure SM7Bs and plug them straight into the Zoom? Recorded, not live. My name is Sunshine. Sunshine, okay. That's a tough one on a Zoom F6. Yes, you sure can plug them directly in. You'll get plenty of gain from the F6, and that should not be a problem. You should not need a cloud lifter. You should be set to go. So good luck with your podcast. And make sure you use Auto Mix, because that will help you a lot with post-production. All right. Jose Contreras, happy 4th of July to you too, Jose. All right. Archie, I'm having trouble finding a clean shielded TRS 3.5mm cable. Sometimes it's just the simple things, but getting a shielded TRS cable is a bottleneck for my stuff that doesn't use XLR. I actually got some a few years ago from monoprice.com. They had some that were pretty nicely shielded, so that's worked out well for me. All right. Mark says, I miss the Nagra 4S TC analog portable reel-to-reel sync recorder. Would still work with digital video mirrorless cameras today. I wish I could try one of those, Mark. I have never had the opportunity to work with a Nagra, and I just hear nothing but wonderful stories about how amazing they sound. All right. Okay, Anthony Goodley asks, which medium-priced dynamic mic would be best to not pick up fan noise from a room fan and a PlayStation fan? I'm not sure what you mean by mid-priced, but that's where the Shure SM7B could be a good choice. But if you can't afford that, I think the Shure SM58 could do the job for you. The Samson Q2U could do a good job for you. Those are probably my 2 first choices. So, and one of those hopefully fits into the mid-price range for you. All right. Mr. Hang, whoa, you're a Cali boy? Learned something new. Northern Cal or Southern Cal? Los Angeles area. So I grew up in Thousand Oaks, which is north of Los Angeles by about 40 miles. Gerlal says, how can I connect a mic and headphones on iPad Pro when I call Skype video call, but does not connect external mic for sound? How to hear sound on headphone, another person on video call? What can I do? My wife actually does that with just a regular iPad. She uses a Rode NT USB Mini into the iPad. So you have to use the USB to Lightning adapter. Now the iPad Pro, you could go in just USB-C. And then she plugs the headphones into the iPad's headphone jack. Now, I don't know if the iPad Pro, I think it has a headphone jack. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't have one. But that's what she had to do. She had to plug the headphones into the iPad itself, not into the microphone. So hopefully that helps you out on that front. Okay, second from Rob. Okay, first, congrats. Second, have you looked at the budget Clark Technic mic booster CT1? It's a sub $50 Fethead clone, matched to my Rode Pod mic, and it works like a charm. I have not tried it, but it sounds like we have an endorsement there from Mr. Rob. Okay, so Rob, thanks for that. Daniel James Van Delsum, how did you end up in Utah? I married a beautiful woman whose parents moved here to Utah, so that's why we're here. And it's beautiful up in the mountains here. We live at 6,000 feet altitude. See, here's where I'm not a good metrics person, which we talked about earlier. Let's see what that means in metric terms. Convert 6,000 feet to meters. That would be 1,828 meters in altitude, just so you're aware. So it's beautiful up here. We're in the mountains. There are 4 ski resorts within 15 minutes of my home. I wish I could get out and ski more often, but I don't. I don't get out nearly as much as I'd like. But anyway, we do enjoy Utah here. I have a question on the MixPre 3 audio 24-bit. Any audio quality different between MixPre 3 Mark II audio 24-bit? Not that I've noticed, Jose. They sound, when you're in 24-bit mode, those two sound the same. I have nothing that I could detect just by hearing. Okay, we need to kind of wrap this up. I apologize, I need to get going here. I just wanted to, again, say thanks to everybody. Thanks for all of your support over the years, and we will continue to do this. There's no change planned in terms of producing content, so we'll continue to do that. I'll continue to produce my courses as time allows when I'm not at my day job. And again, thank you so much. Get out there, make some great sound, and make some great videos, and we will talk to you again soon.